Is up, everybody? It is Tuesday night. Time to talk some football. You guys all know me, SAJ, Loudmouth of the South, and self-proclaimed, owner of the Green Bay Packers because I own one. I think I might actually own two shares, but I know for sure one. And that didn't help me at all this year. At all. This guy.
What is up, everybody? I am BD, and you know what? Jay said he's not going to do it anymore because he's can't think of anyone, but I'm still going to do studios. So today, I'm coming at you from the Sun Harvest Studios, and I don't know if you remember what that was,
Oh,
Jay. What?
you
Every,
bastard.
yes. Still love going there.
I used to love going there because it was the only place that you didn't feel bad about snitching free samples, you know?
Yeah, dude, that's
And
where that's where I first got introduced. Those little like dried banana chips. Oh my god, dude. Love
yes.
those. You just reach
Um,
in the bin, grab a couple, and walk around the store.
do you remember that trail mix that they had that had like the dried figs and the dates in it?
Yes.
That was the first time I'd ever had those, and it was just insane.
Yeah.
Just an awesome, like, blowing my 8-year-old mind that there was something out there that existed that tasted so heavenly and so delightful. And it was good for you,
It
right?
was good for you. It was
So,
fruit.
yes,
Yeah. No,
ish.
that was a great place. I used to love going there with my mom back when I was a kid. Good memories.
Yes. Yes, good times, man. So yeah, I'll let you have that one. I don't know why I didn't even think of that one. Probably because it's health food, and I mean, let's be honest, we ain't about that life. So,
No.
anyways, lots to talk about tonight. Lots going on. Whole bunch of movement in the NFL. Everything is absolutely crazy. And meanwhile, I've got to try and share this to all the different pages that we're sharing it to. So, forgive me while I go ahead. But let's talk about some of the games. First and foremost, BD, how do we do on our predictions? Where did we land and where did we get it wrong?
Well, you did a little better than I did. I was three and
Of
three,
course.
and you were 4-2. I think we both picked. I think the ones we got wrong, we picked uh the Bucks. I think we both picked the Bucks to win, and we both picked the Vikings to win. Neither one of those happened. And then I picked the
Ooh,
Chargers, Texans. So everything else we got right.
yep. Um, and again, I was actually a little surprised at the score of that Texans game. I thought for sure the Chargers were going to put up a little bit more of a fight.
Yeah,
That
I
didn't
tell
really
you,
turn
man,
out.
this was a boring week for football. The only competitive game was the Bucks and Washington. Like every other game, I think I fell asleep during. Uh, it was just blowouts. I mean, I don't. None of them were close. None of them, you know. I mean, the Packers maybe had a shot against the Eagles kind of towards the end. I mean, the Rams just mollywopped the Vikings. It was just
Um,
it was kind of a crappy week for football. It was like the first round of the college football playoffs where none of the games were competitive and just they were. I just had them on and watching and was bored out of my mind.
well, I do agree that there was definitely football played. Um, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily boring. I mean, some of these games had some pretty big moments in them where you could feel the momentum and things going on and everything. And that Packers game, what's happening, Matt? Uh, and don't listen to this person. She's busy playing Fallout, so she doesn't really count. Uh,
Which one?
KJ, right there with you, man. I want to see Texans take out Kansas City. No offense to any of our Kansas City fans, you guys have been there and you didn't do anything this year to make it that spectacular. Yeah, but you're not that spectacular of a team this year. And I'm not going to get into the whole conspiracy about, the refs helping you guys win games and things like that. We're not here for any of that nonsense. But what I am going to say is that you seem to be the luckiest team in the league. You happen to get things done at the crucial moments when things need to be done, and you pull off, these 2 or 3 point wins. I haven't seen anything where it was like, man, they're such a decisive team. right? It's
None of their games have been blowouts this year. They've all been, damn near all of them have been close. I think they started showing the stat towards the end of the season that they hadn't scored 30 points at all this season, and I guess there were a couple other teams that hadn't as well, and all those other teams were like 2 wins, 3 wins, whatever. And here's KC with 15 wins. They haven't looked impressive as just as a whole. Obviously, they've won when it's counted, or they've done well enough to win. But they've been the most unimpressive, 15-2 team we've ever seen. So I don't know. I don't know what to think of them. Were they really just coasting through the regular season or what? But we'll see. I'd love to see Houston beat them as well.
Well, this is going to be the time where Kansas City is going to need to show up. If they're that good of a team, they need to put an exclamation point on this win against Texas, right? This cannot be one of those ones where they coast by 2 or 3 points, leave that kind of speculation on the field, how the refs are helping them out, stuff like that. Like, they need to go out there and handle business from the very first snap and prove everybody why they should be in the playoffs and why all that talk about the 3-peat, 4-peat, whatever Pete, why all that is valid to this team. Because so far, as you said, they really haven't done anything to where it's been like, man, they're such a phenomenal team. They're doing just enough to get it done, right? Well, if they're that good, they should be able to put, as I said before, the exclamation point on these wins and take that argument out of everybody's mouth, right?
Yeah, of course.
So overall, I was very impressed with the Texans. I thought it was a very solid win. Stroud went 22 of 33, 282 yards. Pardon me. 1 TD, 1 pick. Mixon went for over 100 yards rushing, and Stroud even got a couple of nice runs in there too, which obviously means that offensive line is doing their job now and keeping him protected, moving defensive linemen out of the way so he can scramble if he needs to. And the receivers, Nico Collins, 7 receptions, 122 yards, man. That obviously had a couple of big plays in there. But some of them were really, really nice. Mixon, of course, got himself a touchdown also. And the defense looked pretty. Well, go ahead.
Honestly, that's what impressed me the most was their defense. I mean, you had Herbert, who threw 3 interceptions all season long, threw 4 this game. I mean, it was the defensive outing by the Texans was fantastic. Nobody would have expected that from Herbert. But yeah, that was a hell of a game by Houston's defense. If they can play like that, then they've definitely got a shot at beating the Chiefs.
So I only got to watch a little bit and mainly just the highlights. That Steelers-Ravens game, I was a little surprised, right? I mean, I know that Dangerous was coming back for a little bit, but it looks like he decided to say, "Nah, we're not going to do that this year." 20 of 29, 270 yards. Go ahead.
I'd say Steelers have looked like garbage the last month and a half. What was it? They lost the last 4 games going into the postseason, and offense has looked horrible. And then again this game, yeah. I know he's never had a losing season at Pittsburgh, but it may be time to move on from Mike Tomlin if you're the Steelers. Hey, what's up, man?
Yep.
It's he hasn't won a playoff game since 2016. Hell, the Cowboys have won a playoff game more recently than that. So
True. I, I think maybe this is probably more the year that we start scrutinizing Tomlin a little bit more. Considering the fact that, I mean, look at the quarterbacks that he has and look at the quarterbacks that he's had. It's hard to get production from a guy like Russell Wilson who comes out, all of a sudden he's Russell Wilson from, 10 years ago and is actually, absolutely putting on a show and then falls apart again. And then you've got the
Yeah.
untested element in Justin Fields, who arguably was surrounded by a pretty bad Chicago team and never really achieved that potential that he was supposed to be, getting to. And I'm sorry, these messages in the chat just throw me off sometimes. Um,
Just ignore the
again,
spam.
I try, but it's hard.
Oh,
Shiny, Yep.
poop is
Again,
candy.
yep. Justin Fields has not had the chance to kind of elevate to where he was supposed to be. I think
I think he's
maybe
had the chance. I just don't think he has the ability.
I'd like to think that that's not the case. I'd like to think that there was a reason why he got into the NFL in the first place. But I mean, I could be wrong, right? Maybe Justin Fields is just another flash in the pan. Like, he had a great college showing, came out with a lot of promise, and the game just isn't what he thought it was going to be. And,
Yeah, we see that a lot
he's
from quarterbacks. I mean, there's the road is paved with first round quarterback busts in the
yeah.
NFL. So
Well, and oddly enough, so on I think it's a NFL Sports Minute podcast that I listen to in the mornings when I'm going into work. They were talking about that. Three of the four first round quarterbacks that were drafted in that draft year with oh god, I can't even remember all the names. Anyways, there were three draft picks. I think it was the 2017 draft or something like that. Uh they're all in the playoffs, right? And the fourth one is going after his MBA. He bounced around. Maybe it's not 2017. Maybe it was 2020 something. Anyways, I'll have to go back and look. The point is that you've got three of the top four quarterback picks that are in the playoffs now, right? Showing that they're where they're supposed to be. The fourth guy has gone back to school and is working on his MBA because he didn't make it. He went to
yeah,
7 different teams in, I think they said 5 years, something like that, and just did not cut in it. So, anyways, here's the other problem, right? You've got Tomlin going up against Lamar Jackson, who arguably is gonna. I mean, he's in the conversation for Player of the Year. I mean,
oh
it's
yeah, yeah.
Lamar freaking Jackson, right? And with the Steelers team that you have, I mean, how are you going to shut that down, right? So you kind of knew that that was going to be an L,
Yeah, and I
all
think
things considered.
most people expected the Ravens to win, and I think most people expected the Ravens to win big, but you know, it was a little closer than most people probably thought they would. But still, like you've got to be you maybe you can't stop Lamar Jackson, but you've got to have an offensive in place to put up more than 14 points in a playoff game. You've got to have you got to know what you're playing against, and they haven't shown that. And it's stupid plays. They had a long pass to Pickens that he pushed off, really didn't need to, but he just did. They got called back on a OPI, and it's a lot of the dumb plays that you see from Pittsburgh, and we've talked about this with the Cowboys and other teams. That's coaching. The dumb plays come from coaching. So
Yeah, I don't disagree. I still don't think we're at that point yet where we talk about, necessarily canning Tomlin, but he definitely sure needs to be scrutinized next year.
maybe
And
yeah,
I
maybe
mean,
not
under
this year, but I do think there's going to be some. I think there's going to be some eyes on him next year. I think his seat's going to start to get a little warm.
yeah, yeah, if he doesn't start doing something, and I would say maybe even possibly as early as the beginning of the season. Like if he doesn't start putting up some decisive wins with some quality players, he may not make it to midseason. We'll have to wait and see.
I don't know.
Meanwhile,
I don't see the Steelers firing midseason. So
I mean, on the same token, the Cowboys have done that before, and they kept McGurthy around till the bitter end. So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit
yeah,
because I
yeah.
definitely want to get your take on that situation and who you think is going to be stepping in. But let's go on to the Broncos Bills, which no surprise to anybody, the Bills handled business there.
I thought that was going to be a
And
close game. I thought the Broncos were going to hang in there a little more than they did. That was actually a little surprising to me, but
well, Josh Allen did Josh Allen, 20 to
yeah.
26, 272, two tutties. Uh and KJ, I'd love to know more about this, and I'm sure you're talking about the Ravens. Okay, I'll let you comment on that in a bit. But so Bo Nix did not have a bad game. It just obviously was not enough to get business done. I mean, 13 to 22, 144 yards, one touchdown, no picks. Uh, but again, and we talked about this before, right? When your quarterback is leading your rushing yardage, mm, probably not such a good day, right? Four rushes for 43 yards. Obviously, he broke off a couple of pretty big ones, probably some blown coverage opportunities, but it just wasn't enough to get points on the board. So it looks like Denver obviously only put points up in the first quarter, and then that was the last time they saw the end zone.
Oh, it was the first
Meanwhile,
drive of the game. They went out and scored a touchdown, and no more.
yep,
They scored first. I think they got the ball first, went in, scored a touchdown, and you're like, all right, well, this is going to be a good game, man. Denver's coming to play, and they're like, just kidding.
yeah. Mhm. There's my frenemy right there. And perfect timing for him to pop in
Yep.
because now we get to talk about the Packers and the Eagles. And you were talking earlier about the first possession, right? Pretty much knew that the Packers were doomed on that first possession when they received the kickoff and fumbled, right? Absolute, absolute pandemonium. Now, um, it's safe
But
to say,
but did
but
you? How do you feel about the replay of that fumble? Because the replay from up top, it seemed to be pretty clear that a Packer grabbed the ball, had control of it, and was down. Now, we all know what happens in the dog piles when there's a fumble and you got a bunch of players wrestling away. Stuff changes, possessions change, whatever. You may not always get a clear recovery, but that picture, that video looked pretty clear that y'all recovered that fumble and was down before he got jumped on.
yeah. Now I will say that I missed the opening drive, and I'm kind of glad I did because I probably would have said some unchristian like words. But um, I do agree in the moment. Yeah, that was a bad call. Did it change anything? Would it have affected our game plan? The way it
Oh,
turned out, absolutely not. Because I saw the
yeah.
next drive where we couldn't do anything. Um, and we'd kind of push down the field, and then we're done, right? There was talk that potentially Jordan Love might have been playing through an injury. Okay, and I get that. But if that's the case, this is where, and I will agree with Chris on this one. That's where the coach needs to be cognizant of the performance of his players and maybe make an executive decision and pull out your number one and put in your number two because we're not worried about people's feelings and what they think they can accomplish. We're worried about what they can actually accomplish on the field. And if your number two is in better position to make a difference on the field, then you go with your number two, right? We saw that with Bo Nix. They brought in their backup quarterback to try and mix some things up and see what they could do. Now, granted, he was only in for one play, and I'm sure it was probably some kind of a trick play. But still, like you bring in your other quarterback. If plan A isn't working, then you try plan B. And if plan B doesn't work, then you go to plan C, right? Like you've got to plan for these contingencies. And I don't think it's all necessarily on the coaching because again, like you gave the bag to Jordan Love and you're expecting him to do something. And Chris, I mean, you're right. Maybe Willis wouldn't have done anything, but
Yeah,
we don't know.
I
You
you know
know,
I agree. I agree with Chris that there's such a large gap in talent between Love and Willis. Uh,
Hmm,
you know, Chris said here, Love said after the
no,
game
sir.
it didn't bother him. Now, of course, he's gonna say that because that's just what you say most of the time. But the Jordan Love is so much better than your backup quarterback. Like it's obvious. So unless Jordan Love is actually hurt, then you stay with him. He threw 3 interceptions in the game. I don't remember those interceptions or how bad they were, but still,
I remember one of them.
you know you got to stay with Jordan Love. Like there's at
So
100%. Unless
let,
Jordan Love cannot walk, you got to stay with him.
let me break down this one play. It was in the first quarter. Jordan Love throws the ball to the middle of the field on a crossing route, throws it high. The intended receiver had to leap in the air, and the ball was still a good 2.5 to 3 feet over his head. We're lucky that one didn't get turned into a pick. It was so high over the intended receiver's head that the second receiver who was running a crossing route almost thought it was intended for him and doubled back to try and make a play for it because he's like, "Oh crap, was it mine?" Um, and that's when I forget who I believe it was the safety made a dive for it and almost caught it. It almost was an interception. Um, and Jeremy, you're right. I mean, it's not just the fact that we had our Christian Watson going down, right? We had Kraft who could have contributed and did a decent job. I don't want to take anything away from him. And we definitely don't want to discredit Philly's defense, right? Here's the problem right here, right? Thrown into double triple coverage. He's trying to play gunslinger style football without necessarily the skill set to do that. A guy like Brett Favre, who can throw in a double triple coverage, he's going to get picked once, maybe every 10 times. But he's able to do crazy stuff like that because he just has that crazy kind of skill. Jordan
Yeah.
Love, I believe, wants to play like that, but isn't quite there yet. So maybe don't do things like that. Don't throw in a double and triple coverage because you're not the guy that can get, 9 out of 10 of those passes right in that sweet spot. Okay. Now you're talking about Jordan or Willis not having the same skill level as Jordan Love. I kind of disagree based on the games that we did see Willis in, right? He handled business and he took very good control of the team. But that was also while everybody was still pretty healthy, right?
Yeah.
So there's some of it that plays into that. But I would not be surprised if Willis gets poached by somebody to potentially be a starter somewhere. Now, it's not going to be, like anybody who's got, one of these quarterbacks that they're investing their future in, but, perhaps maybe Las Vegas, who's, kind of struggling with a quarterback, or, Tennessee, who's kind of looking to try and reset their identity, you know, uh, maybe, Willis is the guy that and in fact, I think, didn't Willis come from Tennessee?
Yeah.
So it might,
Tennessee. That's who. Which would be kind of funny. Trade your quarterback away for like a 7th round draft pick, and then hey, just kidding. Why don't you come back?
bring him back for like a first or a second, you know,
Yeah.
but he could be,
You reminded me of something I saw during the game when you talked about the secondary player dive for the ball. It was just something I thought was pretty humorous. Um, there was a Philly was on offense. It was one of y'all's secondary players, and Hurts threw a ball, and the guy dove for it and tried to get an interception. It landed a little short. It's your one of your secondary players that wears the Guardian helmet. Well, he
Oh
was
yeah.
he was mad at himself for missing the interception. He just starts hitting himself on the helmet. I'm like, you're wearing this Guardian helmet thing to protect your head, but you're gonna hit the side of your helmet because you're pissed off that you missed a catch. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, I've never totally understood why players do that. Like I can understand, maybe slamming your hands on the ground or something like that. Although, really, do you want to damage the tools that you need to do your job? It's kind of weird. But yeah, I don't understand the hitting yourself or anything like that because what's it going to do other than, I mean, you get caught up in the emotions of the moment. I understand that and everything, but at the end of the day, you're just kind of beating on yourself for no apparent reason. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? But anyways, yeah, we got trounced, and credit to our defense. I know you're already seeing some information come out, like Jair Alexander, which is arguably one of our better players. He's kind of upset with the organization. Don't know the whole story behind that. Don't know that we ever will know the whole story. Have to keep checking into it to try and figure it out. But in the meantime, Jair's pissed off. He's probably not going to be coming back. Um, this I got to see. I got to read this. Um, eh, the part that's cut off, it says point blank. 0-6 against the top teams in the NFC won't get you far. We have lots of work to do. In that part, Chris, I definitely agree with you. We are not, and we probably shouldn't even have made the playoffs. I think a generous schedule and some grace of God luck with finding Willis in the first place really helped get us into a position that we shouldn't have been in, and we definitely got exposed a little bit with this game against Philadelphia, who's arguably top four team, easily top three team, if you really want to get
Yeah,
technical about it.
yeah,
Um, we should not have been in that position. We were. It just kind of worked itself out that way. Some of the games we won, we definitely showed that we could be a competitor. But I don't think that we should have been in that position to be in the playoffs like we were last year, which I said it last year. We lucked out and got into the playoffs. When we played Dallas, that's when we actually looked like we belonged there. Okay.
yeah.
Uh, and then we got smoked, right? But that seems to be the story, right? We're
Did y'all
kind
get
of
swept? I thought y'all like kept it pretty close with the 49ers.
we got smoked in the sense that we got beat. We've never
Okay.
in the playoffs for the last several years have not been able to beat the San Fran curse. Every time we meet them in the playoffs, we lose.
You know what?
Um,
Welcome to Dallas. You know that same thing with us.
yes. Chris, you're right. We shouldn't have been there. If that wasn't for the seventh seed, we wouldn't have been. Arguably, if some other teams would have actually shown up and won some more games, we probably would have gotten bumped too. And Josh Jacobs probably isn't going to have any lives left after this season because we abused that poor man. Now I will say he got 81 yards this game, which was kind of surprising. Kraft only produced 10 yards total, which is surprising because I mean he's our number one tight end,
Yeah.
and he's kind of a beast. So that was a little bit. I'm sorry, he got 26 yards receiving and 10 yards rushing. Again, low numbers, right? Uh oh wow. Taking some shots here. And Mr. Mayor, we're definitely going to talk about that in a little bit, but we want to get through the playoffs first because we've got some ideas. Okay. Anyways, Green Bay, not so much. I knew they were going to lose, but I didn't think it was going to be like this. I mean, it's rough, right? And Chris, you're kind of right. It is sad that Jacobs was the only one that showed up. There's a couple of other players like Adrian Cooper on defense, who arguably is in the running for defensive rookie of the year. Hope he gets it. The kid deserves it. He balled out this year. But there's only a couple of players that I could say actually showed up, and I really don't think Love was one of them. And so I could definitely understand what's his name's frustration with the organization.
No.
So, and Chris, I mean, as long as I've been a Packers fan, and I'm sure you've been a Packers fan for a long time too, but I started out when the Packers were absolute trash and couldn't couldn't win a game, right? When we still have 14 game season, could not win a game, and Lambeau Field was still selling out, full capacity. So, anyways, let's go on to Commanders and Buccaneers. I believe we called this one for the Buccaneers, and the Commanders wound up sneaking in a playoff doink and getting it done at the very end.
Man, that was that was the doink in. You don't see that too often.
No.
But that's it. Like I said earlier, that was the best game of the weekend.
Yeah.
It was most
Arguably,
competitive, and Washington looked pretty good. I mean, Tampa didn't look terrible, but we thought they were going to win. But it was a hell of a game. It was a dogfight both ways.
I honestly thought that betting on Baker Mayfield was going to be the safe bet there because he's got the big game experience. He's got the knowledge to be able to handle, his business out there. 15 to 18, 185 yards, not horrible. Backed up by, 77 rushing yards by Irving and then 23 of his own on the ground. I mean, it sounds statistically like, they definitely had some kind of control, but then you flip over to Daniels. He was 24 of 35, 268. And then Eckler actually, threw up 27 yards. I'm sure he probably had to stop for, oxygen or maybe, put some oil on his walker wheels or something. But hey,
he had a couple hard runs, man. It was,
Well, and I was going to say this year, there's a lot of cats who were counted out, like they were done. And they're like, oh, wait a minute, not quite yet. Right. So it's really kind of surprising that, some veterans really showed up big this year. And, but yeah, unfortunately, Commanders managed to get in the field goal range, and a lucky doink rather, got them into the next round of the playoffs. So that being said, was definitely the parts that I did get to see. Definitely was a fun game to watch. And I'll be honest, I didn't watch much football after that Green Bay loss because I was just kind of just so worn out and frustrated. I tried to be objective, and I'm just like, I can't. I got to take a break from football for a day. I didn't even watch.
I watched every game, and that Washington Buccaneers one was the only one I stayed awake for the entire time. So,
yeah. Now, I've got to say, I was completely surprised. And, my heart goes out to all of our Vikings friends. This is not the way you want to see a season end, especially not to the Rams.
Your heart does not go out. You were rejoicing and dancing, and you were celebrating. Don't lie. I know you were.
I mean, maybe this morning, right? Because I didn't watch the game. I did not watch the game. I was hearing updates, and I'm like, what the heck? Right. And I thought for sure that they were going to swing back in the third quarter. That maybe the early scores and stuff kind of had them rocked, but Sam Darnold is Sam Darnold. You can count on him to be Sam Darnold, right? And this is the same
turned
problem.
into the Sam Darnold that we all thought he was going to be at the beginning of the year.
Yep. Who is Kirk Cousins 2.0? Yeah, you're going to get 6 incredible games out of him. You just don't know which 6, right? And Chris, you're not wrong. I'm ready to see all of our factions come back together and support our UFL family, but we still got to talk about the NFL, right? It is the elephant in the room, so we got to pay attention to it. Anyways, yeah, Sam Darnold, 25 of 40, 245 yards, 1 tutty, 1 interception. Aaron Jones, only 48 yards. Aaron Jones, arguably, one of the better backs, at least in this generation, and he only got 48, man. Like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
Flip over to the Rams, Matthew Stafford, which people have been counting out. Coach Tom was one of them. who had said that Stafford is on the back end of his career, pretty much done. Well, 19 to 27, 209 yards, 2 tutties, right? And he rushed for a loss, overall loss. Poor guy. Um, but you got it done on the ground too, right? You had 85, 86 yards, give or take,
Yeah.
which definitely helps him. And apparently, Minnesota's defense, who we could not seem to break, was able to handle the Rams fairly easily. I mean, handled or not able to handle the Rams at all. That's what I meant to say.
And I wonder how much of the game against the Lions that Minnesota laid an egg on too, the last game of the season, how much of that did the Rams look at and say, all right, this is what we got to do to stop them? Because I mean, it was 2 terrible games in a row from Minnesota. Last week, or the final week 18 against the Lions, and then this week here in the playoffs. So it seems like maybe the Rams saw something and were able to capitalize on that.
And you may not be wrong. Like, Minnesota may have tipped their hand a little bit too much in that Detroit game. Although I would think that they would have reset the game plan. I would hope to God they wouldn't have tried to recycle the same game plan from the week prior. But maybe there's something to that. Maybe, the coach from Minnesota was like, there's no way they're going to expect it. And so we're going to do it. Right. I mean, it's a risky move, but if it's never been done, right, you don't know until you try it. And while, Amanda, I don't necessarily disagree from a personal standpoint. I mean, what, at 14-3? Maybe they're not that bad, right?
I mean, they lost the only one that mattered. So,
yeah. And Chris, you're not wrong. I mean, if they had lost to the Rams in week 7, maybe that's that proverbial monkey on the back. Like, you just you lost to them, and you can't figure out how to beat them, right? And you go to the Coach Klein Football for Dummies handbook and see what kind of oop de oop you can pull out there, and just try something different. But apparently they didn't. So yeah, it wound up not being pretty at all. So that's the part. I mean, I would have liked to have at least seen somewhat of a closer contest. Ultimately, I I would have a tough time saying I wanted to see the Vikings win and be telling the truth here. But I definitely would have liked to have seen them, put up a little bit bigger of a challenge. Like, this is just demoralizing. And so I feel bad for Vikings fans, the ones that we know that we get along with anyways. So
you feel bad for the ones that you tolerate.
no, most of them are okay. And then there's Robert Rankin. Okay. But so do we go on to this next weekend, right? Texans are playing the Chiefs Saturday at 3:30, and then the Commanders are playing the Lions at 7 p.m. And then on Sunday, you've got the Rams at the Eagles, and then 5:30 you've got Ravens at the Bills. This the only one I'm kind of doubtful about. Well, maybe two. The Yes, Sam flopping Darnold, and thank you for keeping it clean. You could even have said flipping, and it would have been acceptable, but not the other word. Um, so Texans and Chiefs, obviously, we're pulling for the Texans. I want to see them, and I want to see C.J. Stroud. Especially after the rough start and the kind of rough season that he's had this year. I'd like to see some redemption here. I would absolutely like to see him just beat the hell out of the Chiefs. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I said
I'm
pulling for the Texans, but I'm not picking the Texans. So kind of the same with Green Bay against the Eagles. Yeah, I wish they would win, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Right. But if the Chiefs are going to win, they better put an exclamation point on this win to show that they're here for a reason.
I mean,
not these 2 and 3 point wins anymore.
Doesn't matter. The Chiefs win. They're facing either the Bills or the Ravens next week. And
right.
I think that's where the Chiefs' luck runs out. against
And
either
that's
one of
the
those
only
teams.
other right. That's the only other game where I have questions about as far as who's going to pull it off. Right? You've got Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, two of arguably the most exciting quarterbacks to watch right now. And
Two MVP candidates
I,
right there. You know.
yep. And I think this game is going to decide who the MVP is.
Well, they've
Um,
already voted, but you know, maybe who the MVP should be, but
or maybe who the okay. I'll go along with
sports
that.
writers
I'll
have
go
already
along with
voted
that.
for it, so it won't
That's true.
matter.
That's true. But I think ultimately, I think the Bills pull it off, but I think it's going to be super close. Probably Bills by 3.
You
So,
know, they
um,
played when did they play? Oh, so the Ravens beat the Bills early into September this season, 35-10. That was, I think, the Bills' biggest loss this past season. Um,
yeah,
but
and
I I'm picking the Bills. I think uh I think they're on a roll. I think they've, you know, I think uh the Josh Allen
yep,
is I think he's gonna push the Bills to victory. So
yep,
I think it's gonna be a hell of
I
a
think,
battle, but I'm
yep,
picking the Bills for that one.
I agree. Now, Commanders at Lions, I don't think it's even going to be remotely close, unless some kind of black magic voodoo happens to fall upon the Lions. I think they're going to be uh, going on in the championship game, or yeah, the championship round to play the Eagles. I don't think that one's really even going to be close either. Again,
I'm picking the Lions
mhm,
and I'm picking the Rams. Picking the
really
Rams to
upset
upset the
win against
Eagles.
Philly.
Yep.
Okay, okay. Well, there's our predictions. They're locked in, and we'll see how things go. Speaking of seeing how things go, it looks like we're going to have to wait and see how things are going to go in the Dallas coaching position, Brian. But let's talk about some of that because there's a lot of speculation about who could potentially be there, specifically in the primetime spot.
Oh, shut up. You're an idiot.
You're just mad
No,
because it was good.
no.
It was a great lead in.
It
Let's
was
talk
okay.
about it. Deion Sanders. There's
Well,
a lot of talk about him potentially.
first let's talk about the Cowboys moving on from McCarthy. I said last week that I thought that they were going to bring him back, um,
Mhm.
just from, you know, from reasons that, you know, well, they refused to let the Bears talk to him. They started in talks. I I think Jerry wanted to bring McCarthy back, but I think Jerry didn't want to commit to more than a year or two with McCarthy uh, to let him kind of prove himself. And you know, I'm willing to bet that McCarthy was like, I'm not interested in only getting a 1 or 2 year contract. I want, you know, something 4, 5, 6 years, whatever. And
Long
they've
term.
said, okay, well, let's part ways. That's kind of what I think happened with that. Like it wasn't, well, you're fired. We're not bringing you back. I think Jerry really wanted him back to give him a chance to prove himself. It was probably just wasn't a deal that McCarthy wanted to sign. So I think it was a mutual, hey, you know what? Then let's just move on. Um,
Mhm.
as far as Dion, no, 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 hell no, no. Um, I don't even know where to start.
I,
He's
I don't I don't disagree with you. I think first and foremost, Dion is quite happy where he's at in Colorado. He's made a difference. He's made a huge impact, and he's kind of found his school that he's comfortable with. He's also said that there are like some specific stipulations that he would need in order to even entertain going over to Dallas, and it doesn't sound like any of those things are going to be met.
well, the
So
only thing
that's
like
pretty much
he wants to coach his sons. That's his stipulations. Is where, you know, wherever his sons go, he wants to go. And
right.
I mean,
Now, there's there was discussion about him potentially maybe taking over the head coaching spot in Las Vegas if he can, get his sons there. That's kind of a possibility. There's going to have to be some horse trading done to make that happen. Um, so I think ultimately his son is going to wind up uh, somewhere where he's not going to be able to get the head coaching position. So uh, he's going to stay in Colorado until potentially the stars align and uh, he gets that opportunity maybe to coach his son at a different team. Right.
Yeah,
But it's
and
certainly not going to be the Cowboys. And it most likely
he
won't be Las Vegas either.
he has not proved himself as a college football coach yet either. Like he doesn't deserve an NFL job. Um, he's been with Colorado 2 years. Yes, he's done a good turnaround from where Colorado was to where they are now, but he's still not like the top echelon of coaches in college football. He's the sexy name. And
Yep.
what we all know about Jerry is he loves those sexy names. So do I think that he would bring Dion in if he, if he wanted to? Absolutely, he would, because he's dumb like that. And Jerry cares more about people talking about the Cowboys than the Cowboys actually going out and winning. And Deion Sanders coaching the Cowboys is going to get everyone to talk about him. But you know what, I think Deion needs to stay in college for a while. You know, prove to be one of the best coaches in college, and then maybe make a move. But we've seen, you know, uh, uh, Nick Saban tried it. Who is the coach? My mind just went blank. Ohio State. Urban Meyer. He tried it. There's been a lot of college coaches that have tried it, and very, very few have been successful. So, you know, Dion needs to stay in
So
college for a little bit more and coach and kind of you know, get that, just stay there for a little while more.
yeah. We'd had, conversations this week about potential candidates for Dallas because we knew obviously this was going to be coming just from the writings on the wall, right? Well, with the disagreement about, him going to talk to Chicago and all that other nonsense, and Mr. Mayor does bring up a point that, Jerry offered a 1-year contract and McDoubles wanted a 3-year because
Yeah.
go figure, right? But um in that, we had also mentioned a couple of names that could potentially be coming up. One of which Coach Tom threw out there, which is a bit of a stretch, and you don't seem to like this idea too much. But potentially Kellen Moore coming back home, right? Now,
No.
there's upsides and downsides to that. But Sports Illustrated has a couple of names that I hadn't heard in the conversation, and I think they might actually bear some weight. Now, again, this is Sports Illustrated making these educated guesses here, and who knows, right? We don't know what Jerry's going to work out, but one name that's thrown into the conversation now is Steve Sarkisian. That could potentially be because there is a connection to Jerry and the Dallas Cowboys. Is it going to be necessarily a great fit? Mm, maybe. I think it's a
I
little bit of
mean,
a stretch. Again, you're
we've
you're talking
already
about a college coach.
we
Go
already
ahead.
see that he picks the wrong quarterback to play in the game. So that
Mhm.
already there's a knock against him.
Right. And then when Arch Manning does become eligible and gets drafted eventually by the Cowboys, which probably isn't going to happen, but you're not going to put him back with that same coach, right? It's just, yeah, it's not such a great fit. Lincoln Riley, head coach of USC, that actually might not be a bad idea, right? Um, a little bit of a stretch, but again, I mean, there are some college coaches that have made the transition up and made it work. I don't know that they make a jump from uh, college head coaching straight into NFL head coaching. Um, but there could be some potential there. And I think Lincoln Riley is probably not a bad fit overall. He's going to have to figure out what to do with Prescott, but I mean, there's bigger challenges too, and that hopefully will be addressed in the off season, and get that taken care of. There's a couple of mentions like Aaron Glenn with the Lions, Joe Brady with the Bills, and I think we talked about those guys last week. Um, but I really think maybe Brian Flores with Minnesota now, or I don't know that Cliff Kingsbury is going to be available, but we'll have to see. But there's obviously going to be some more head coaching positions potentially opening up. So some of these names may just be, flashes in the pan. So I
Yeah,
really think,
I mean, right now, like if you're looking at betting odds, Dion is the favorite to land. I don't think that's going to happen. You mentioned Kellen
yeah,
Moore's is number two. I wouldn't surprise me, but I mean, Cowboys fans, we celebrated when Moore was fired as the offensive coordinator. He was terrible. He was a terrible offensive coordinator. He was predictable. We knew exactly what he was going to do every single play. Everything we've complained about the Cowboys, coaching is what Kellen Moore did. And just good numbers in the regular season, but just everything fell off. Just didn't know what to do. Didn't know how to make adjustments in the playoffs. So everything I've complained about Mike McCarthy, Kellen Moore is younger Mike McCarthy.
true.
Cliff Kingsbury, he's looked good as the OC of Washington. We also saw him as a coach in Arizona, and he was
Yeah,
not very good as a coach in Arizona. So
right.
there's a reason he got fired and had to take a couple of years off football. And some people are just supposed to be coordinators, and he's probably one of those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I there's a lot of offensive guys that are being talked about for coaching, and I get it, I understand it. I wouldn't mind bringing a defensive guy on. Bring a Kingsbury on for as a OC. Who
Yeah.
my dream OC would be. I think I've told you this before. Tony Romo.
I
Bring
mean,
bring on a Dan Quinn type defensive minded coach. Bring in Tony Romo for offensive coordinator. I mean, we've seen him in broadcasts how he can diagnose these plays, how he can diagram them. He's got the mind of a coordinator, of a coach. I think that would be a fantastic pairing right there. You want to bring in a former player on your coaching staff?
yeah,
There you
I
go.
think that'd actually be a really good fit for him. But again, we're just fans speculating. So
Yeah,
let's not start rumors.
yeah. I'm head canoning here.
Yeah,
But Jerry would have to give him enough money to pull him out of the booth.
I
So who
don't think it.
knows? Who
I
knows
don't
what
think it
that
would
would
be that
take?
hard
But
because he'd be one step closer to the action, right? And maybe Romo couldn't get it done on the field as a player, but maybe he can as a coach, right? And that's how he gets the Super Bowl ring.
but I've given my thoughts about that as well. All right,
Okay, so yeah,
Romo was a good quarterback, and if he had the defense Dak Prescott had, he would have at least two
yep.
Super Bowls.
So covered a lot of NFL here because that's pretty much mostly what we're focused on this week with the playoffs and not really much going on. I do think Green.
I mean, the only other really football thing is college football.
Well,
So, and I don't know if you watched any of the college playoff
no,
games
we'll get to that in a second, but just kind of recap. We covered all the NFL games. For my one or two Packers friends that are in the audience watching, we're gonna be okay, guys. We're gonna be fine, right? You knew that there was gonna be a bit of a transition.
Jump off the bandwagon. It's over.
Nope,
It's
nope.
over.
But
Jump off.
by the way, with Darnold kind of blowing it in the playoffs like he did, and if I remember correctly, I heard that this is a contract year, like he's up for contract renewal, right?
Yeah, because they only signed Darnold to a
Right.
1-year deal.
Could this
So
be my prediction coming to fruition? Favre 2.0. Keep your eyes on the NFL. Let's see what happens. Okay. But I don't.
I mean, we didn't talk about it last week. I know it was kind of on our list, but we we got too heavy into everything else and took too much time. I mean, yeah, Aaron Rodgers, he hit 500 yards touchdown passes, or I'm sorry, 500 touchdown passes in his final game. One of 5 quarterbacks to do that. I mean, he's obviously done with the Jets. What does he do? Does he retire? Does he go to Minnesota?
He's about the same age Favre was when Favre went to Minnesota. Now, I know a bunch of people are going to say, no, that's not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. But everybody said the same thing about Favre. And Favre went to Minnesota and had statistically one of his best years there. So there is some, even if it's a wild harebrained idea, there is some validity to it, because that is probably one of his best opportunities to get to the big dance. And he'll be able to do his part. Plus, he's got Aaron Jones there. He may be bringing Devontae with him. Although there's speculation about Devontae coming back to Green Bay, because it sounds like Green Bay is going to be making some bigger pushes to get some receivers for Jordan Love, rather than relying on some of these rookies and second, third year guys to perform like veterans, right? So again, we got to wait and see. But could this be, right? Could this be the stars and the moons aligning and Aaron Rodgers making his triumphant return back to the NFC North to try and take the Vikings to the Super Bowl? And I hope it ends the same way it did for Favre.
I mean, this time you don't have a Aaron Rodgers jersey to burn if he does that, like you did with the Favre one.
Yeah.
I've still got those pictures somewhere.
They're all over Facebook. And I promise you, I could find an Aaron Rodgers jersey for cheap enough to go buy it and burn it. Okay? Because that's just sacrilege. You just don't do that. But maybe he does.
Oh, you're gonna order a China jersey to burn?
Speaking of which, potential rebirth of the 85 Bears, right? You've got a coach who loves working with young quarterbacks now over in Chicago, pretty much. I don't know if the deal is actually signed or not, but McCarthy loves working with younger quarterbacks. And you've got a young quarterback that has a lot of raw talent that could be developed into something, right? Get some reinforcements around him, a good solid running back, and that solid offensive line. And, Chicago may be a dominant force again. I don't think that they're going to be knocking down doors and making it to the playoffs next year, but there's some potential there. So expect to see a lot of strong teams coming out of the NFC North. We're just not going to be one of them. I really don't think. I think next year is going to be a bad year for us. I think it's going to be what we politely in the industry like to call a rebuilding year when you're just garbage. And we'll just have to see what happens. But
yeah, and I think McCarthy's. I think he's interviewing with the Bears tomorrow, and then I think I saw he interviewed with the Saints either today or is going to tomorrow, or he's interviewing with the Saints at some point.
He's going to Chicago or he's going to Denny's. One of the two. That's where he's going.
Well, he's definitely going to Denny's. I mean,
maybe he's going to Denny's in Chicago, but he's definitely going to Chicago. Okay, now let's talk about college real quick. I did not watch any college ball. And please ignore the snoring bulldog in the background in case if you guys can hear it, because she's loud.
I watched both of the games, the semifinal games. Notre Dame, Penn State. That was a good game. Notre Dame kicked field goal right at the end to win. Man, I thought Penn State was going to have it, and they were driving. They looked pretty good, and they had plenty of time on the clock. And then their quarterback just throws a bad interception, and gave Notre Dame the ball back with a minute left, and I think they only had to move like 20 yards or something. So it was once that interception got thrown, I was like, man, here's your chance. And the quarterback knew it too. You could just see on his face he was upset with himself, but no, that was an interesting game. And then Ohio State and Texas, I don't think there was much surprise. Ohio State these playoffs have looked like probably the best team, and Texas has looked okay. They've played. I mean, they've played the worst of the playoff teams. And they beat Clemson, I think is who their first game was against, pretty handedly, and then ASU had no business being as close as it was, and ASU took them to overtime. So I don't think there's any surprise that Ohio State beat Texas, but yeah, and kind of like I mentioned earlier, you know, Ewers played the entire game. I think Arch Manning played a couple snaps, and just I don't know why. Arch Manning is by far the better talent. I know Ewers has been good for the season, but you're in a game like that against Ohio State. You need a spark, and there's we talked about it with Green Bay and Love and Willis, but the disparity of talent from Love to Willis is this. From Ewers to Manning is like this. So
I don't,
I knew you were gonna go. Knew you were gonna go there. As soon as I started saying it, I knew you were
yeah,
gonna say something.
I,
But
I I don't disagree. But still, again, you need that spark. You reach out to the guy who can get it done for you.
you need the right
Right.
spark. All right.
Oh, sorry. In our fantasy football thread, somebody suggested Tomlin for the Cowboys head coaching position. Very interesting. I don't think it'll happen, but man, that would be a Jerry move.
I saw that. I saw that. Um, uh, who was it? I think it was the Fox NFL crew. We're talking about
Yeah.
that, and they Jimmy Johnson might have been the one, but he actually suggested that Cowboys and Steelers swap coaches. Tomlin to Dallas, McCarthy to Pittsburgh. Like that it would be a good spot for both of them, and both would kind of be invigorated.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'd I'd love to have Tomlin, like just like I said, a defensive coach, someone to come in, change the culture, you know, and I think Tomlin could do that. He just has to hire the right kind of offensive coaches and stuff. But
Well, again, it's all up for grabs. We'll find out as time goes on. But ultimately, uh, it it's just been it's been an interesting season for sure, right? And the playoffs are not disappointing. So, college football, you've got Ohio State going up against Notre Dame. What is that, next weekend on the 20th?
uh, it's
Monday
Monday
night.
night,
Oh,
so
interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Um, maybe probably not to conflict with the NFL playoffs. Who knows? But that's weird that college playoffs comes on a Monday.
Usually, I mean that's the college football the championship has always been on Monday for or I say always, but for the last 10 years that I remember, 15 years, has been on
Okay.
a Monday. So
So, as the NFL is winding down, as college football is winding down, we should start to expect to see a little bit more from arena football, IFL. I'm sorry, IFA stuff like that. Open tryouts did happen, I believe, this week or are happening this week for the IFA, and we had tryouts for the Corpus Christi Tritons starting last week. There's probably tryouts going on for several of the other arena teams and things like that, and a little bit of shakiness. We talked about it last week going on in AF1. Um, is it really going to affect anything? Doesn't really look like it. They've already gotten, they've adjusted the schedule and everything looks to be fine. So I think they're down to what, like 14 teams. So it's not, necessarily the end of the world, but we still need to see what
yeah,
happens because they started out with such a rocky start last year. Are they going to be able to bounce back this year? Right now, it looks like the Premier League is the IFL, and the IFL seems to be doing just fine, right? So we're going to see the San Antonio Gunslingers there. Hopefully, they turn the season around. Coach Menace will make a run and maybe even get the team deep into the playoffs this year. I know he had some of the weapons to make that happen last year. It looks like he's retooled. He's going to, try something different, which I applaud that of a coach. and it's going to be interesting to see the two Texas teams, and I believe it's the NAL. See how things go there. NAL is always kind of a fun league to watch. It wasn't necessarily top tier, but there was a lot of good games, right? So excited to see some of that start kicking off. Most importantly, though, I'm excited to start seeing some more UFL news coming out, right? Because things are going to start picking up.
Yeah.
We're pretty much into the middle of January, so that means we're going to start seeing more news from them. We're going to start seeing updates from the training camps and stuff like that, and seeing who's making the rosters. And I believe the roster numbers did get cut
Yeah.
down this year. Uh, I have to go back and check and see. I read somewhere where
Yes.
the practice squad numbers did get cut. So you're going to have, yeah,
I believe so. I think that yeah, they start training camp in about a month. Uh, Mid February is when they're so we'll see all the players. And there was a
yeah,
oh, okay. There was a cut down for the Brahmas. I think they released some players that were on technically on the roster, but we're not going to play. Obviously, well, the quarterback who shall not be mentioned was on the list, which nobody was
right.
surprised by. Old Thick Six himself was
Mhm.
on it, but he retired, so that's no
Yeah,
surprise. And a handful of other
yeah.
players.
So yeah, things
So
things are starting to progress in the UFL. I'm excited. I know we're going to be spending a little bit more time on the road than we are at home this year, but that's okay, right? Because we love and hate St. Louis, but we've got some good friends up there, so I'm excited to go up there and see them. I'm definitely excited to get some Ted Drews and some Culvers, maybe even some cheese bread pizza from Emo's. Uh, so uh,
I didn't do White Castle
oh,
last
you're
time.
doing it this
So
time.
you know what? You keep telling me I'm going to regret it, but I still want to try
I
it.
really don't. Everybody says you're going to regret it. That all these problems you're going to have with it, you're not going to. It's just the novelty of it, you
I've got
know.
I've got an iron stomach, so
Yeah.
I'm not scared.
As long as you can eat anything that smells like onions, even if it doesn't have onions in it, you'll be fine. You'll be fine, I promise you. So, anyways, there's a lot more coming, right? So there's a lot of news, like Mayor right here saying that the contract negotiations are currently stalled between the players union and the UFL. I don't expect that to I don't expect that to be anything that holds back the UFL. I'm sure they're going to get it figured out, and we're going to go because there's a lot of time and money
Yeah.
invested in this league, and they're already making plans for expansions and stuff like that. So they're going to figure something out. They're going to get it done. Uh, I'm more excited to see, like, as we start finding out more information about what comes next, what teams are coming back, what teams are being introduced, what's happening, right? Does Seattle make a triumphant return? Do we get another West Coast team? Are we bringing back any East Coast teams? Or are we going to start, expanding out from centrally, start moving into like, Arizona or New Mexico or start moving east, back into Louisiana or like Arkansas or something like that. Don't go to Oklahoma because nobody's there, right? It's just dust and tumbleweeds. But I mean, again, Oklahoma
No,
City could host a team. What's that other uh, city in Oklahoma? Yeah, see, I don't even know. I don't even
there is
remember.
none.
Tulsa.
There,
Tulsa.
there's not. There's none.
Yeah.
No, Tulsa's a figment of your
Oh, okay.
imagination.
Anyways,
It
yeah.
doesn't exist.
Um, the possibilities are endless, right? So there's excitement. Here's the great thing, right? NFL is winding down, but we still have football. We've got plenty to talk about, right? So as things develop, right, keep your eyes on our Facebook page. Make sure to go over and follow us on X. You can follow us on Instagram, Threads, uh, Blue Sky, you name it. We're on all over on the social media. We're not great at keeping up with things, but we definitely post some stuff. We post some funny stuff. So make sure you give it a follow, give us a like, and share with your friends. Time to do our shout outs, right? First and foremost, and this is the one I should have probably led the show off with. I want to give a huge birthday shout out to my little princess, the one and only Izzy Bug. You've seen her at the championship games yelling and getting crazy. You're going to see her again this season. She turns 14 today. So Can't tell you how proud I am
Nice.
of my little bug, man. She is my world. I love her to death, right? Um, also want to give a shout out to you guys, the fans, everybody that's watching, right? All of you, the support, right? We're on episode 94, 6 more episodes till the big one, right? That means what? 2.5 years of doing this and doing this for fun because we love interacting with you guys and we love talking football. That's the whole premise of this show is an opportunity for us to get together, share stories, throw out opinions, be completely wrong, and still be okay with it, right? Shout out to our sponsor, W Energy Drink, and to any potential new sponsors or that are looking for a show to sponsor. Hey, we're here, right? We'd love to use your money to help us keep this thing going. Um, Obviously, also shout out to XFL Mike G for helping us out, Bobby Otten for all the indoor football information that he gives us, and our friends over at Pro Arena Talk, Alternative Football Network, our friends over at Fuel, and can't forget about the Horns Forward podcast because, I mean, hell, that's family, right? That's the other half of us.
Right.
Super excited for this season to start, man. I cannot wait to get back together with my Brahmas family and just hang out and do the things that we do, man. This may be a very action-packed weekend for us on opening weekend because I'm thinking about potentially going over to Houston and razzing all my St. Louis friends that are going to be over there, cheering for the Roughnecks, kinda, right? But then hauling butt over to Arlington and catching the game the next day, right? It's going to be a busy, busy weekend if I can pull it off. But uh, I didn't even see this, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I had your comment covered. Uh, Seattle may not be, and everybody's speculating that Seattle may be coming back. And if they're having a problem with the World Cup, they may be off the list, and there's going to be some potential pissed off fans over in Seattle, right? But anyways, as things unfold, we'll be trying to share them as much as we possibly can. But guys, thank you so much for the support. We appreciate each and every one of you. So with that being said, I'm still going to say it, right? Go Pack, go. Horns forward. BD, you got anything?
We're excited for the UFOs to kick off at the end of March, but we're still got NFL. So you know what? Suck at Washington, suck at Philly, and just go back to your comment from earlier. The only reason Texas doesn't fall into the Gulf of Mexico is because Oklahoma sucks.
Oh, take that. Horns forward, baby. Let's go.